It all began at 2:40 a.m. in a frigid, humming server room. Only the steady stream of coffee and sheer intuition kept me alert. I had no idea that before sunrise, an inconspicuous decision would irrevocably alter the trajectory of my life. 12 screens illuminated my workspace, displaying everything from firewall logs to real-time data streaming across our financial systems. Initially, everything seemed normal. Then, I detected its subtle, repetitive signals targeting our payment authentication infrastructure. These weren't random fluctuations. They were deliberate, controlled, like someone persistently testing a locked door, gently probing the handle. I reviewed the firewall activity logs. No alerts, no flags. This was deeply concerning. It indicated the perpetrator possessed sophisticated skills, capable of evading detection, operating just beneath the threshold that triggers security warnings. I isolated the anomalous network traffic and rerouted it to a sandbox, a secure, virtual environment where I could analyze the threat without jeopardizing the live systems. The source appeared to be internal, an impossibility I couldn't initially comprehend. Further investigation was needed. The IP address pointed to a machine identified as sys01dby, an internal database server decommissioned after our recent infrastructure upgrade. I distinctly recall authorizing its decommissioning myself. And yet, here it was, active, transmitting data through a back channel that should have ceased to exist. My pulse quickened. This wasn't a mere security breach. It was a deliberate act. Someone had reactivated an obsolete system from within the network, an individual with administrative privileges and intimate knowledge of our system architecture. I could have initiated a complete system lockdown, triggering a full-scale emergency response, but that would have alerted everyone, from junior technicians to the executive board. If I was mistaken, the repercussions would be catastrophic, halting millions of dollars in ongoing transactions and potentially ruining my reputation. Therefore, I remained silent, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I worked swiftly, isolating ports, tagging malicious code segments, filtering injected code, and meticulously analyzing real-time metrics for signs of lateral movement. The deeper I investigated, the more certain I became. This was an inside job, not an external attack. The server had been manually restarted. There were no automated flags, no reboot logs, no scheduled tasks, just an abrupt activation, as if it had been resurrected from the digital grave. And at 2:54 a.m., I was the only person in the building aware of this clandestine activity. I had neutralized the immediate threat. However, a far more serious problem persisted. Someone within the company had surreptitiously reactivated a server we had decommissioned months earlier, leaving virtually no trace. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. After disabling the reactivated server's access routes, I remained in the monitoring bay, scrutinizing the residual network traffic, hoping it would reveal its secrets. The attack signature seemed disturbingly familiar. Its ability to circumvent default threat detection, its fragmentation of data, requests to remain undetectable to automated filters. I'd encountered this style before, but not in public networks or external attacks. It was internal, experimental, a style I couldn't place until I recalled a test project from the previous year. During a period when our team was under previous leadership, I delved into the internal code archive. It took me just 10 minutes to locate a sandboxed exploit used in a defunct simulation exercise. The similarities were uncanny: packet delay patterns, credential spoofing, even the segmentation logic. The old file was titled Shadow Stream Beta, Rev C. And the author? Elias Thorne. I froze. Elias had been one of our senior penetration testers, brilliant but erratic, unpredictable. He had proposed the Shadow Stream model to automate internal vulnerability assessments. The approach was bold, bordering on reckless, yet undeniably ingenious in the wrong hands. Ultimately, it was rejected, deemed too unstable, too invasive, and too politically sensitive. He didn't handle the rejection well. Weeks later, Following a disagreement with the department head, he was transferred to a non-operational role, and then, without warning, he disappeared. No farewell email, no LinkedIn update, just gone. Yet, here was his code, weaponized, adapted to seamlessly integrate with our new network infrastructure, a structure that didn't exist during his tenure. This meant someone had meticulously reverse-engineered his blueprint. Someone with up-to-date knowledge of our system architecture. Driven by intuition, I accessed internal directory logs. I expected his name wouldn't be there, but there it was, Elias Thorne, external security consultant, assigned to the office of the CTO. Date: 3 weeks ago. Of course, Adrian, the CTO, in office for only a month, was already implementing significant changes, replacing legacy protocols, reassigning access rights, building a more streamlined, modernized infrastructure, as he termed it. And now, apparently, he was resurrecting old ghosts, albeit in new suits. Elias wasn't merely back, he was deeply embedded. The realization sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't surprise, it was recognition. Everything fit too perfectly. The server's reactivation wasn't accidental. The code wasn't coincidental. The exploit wasn't random. It was all meticulously planned, precisely controlled, and I had walked directly into it, cleaning up their mess while remaining conveniently off the record. I leaned back, the cold air seeping through my blazer. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type. There was nothing more to search for. The answers were staring at me from the dimly lit monitor. Elias had created the weapon, Adrian had brought him back, and I was the last person who wasn't supposed to know. I didn't have the luxury to process the revelation of Elias's return, his quiet reintegration under Adrian's wing, only confirming my initial suspicions. This wasn't a breach, it was a test, and I was the test subject. The intrusion had bypassed all our automated detection systems. This suggested two possibilities. Either the attack was so sophisticated it completely evaded our threat detection engines, or someone had deliberately disabled our safeguards. I checked and found that 3 of the 4 automated flags for eastbound packet flow had been muted, not removed, subtly dampened like adjusting the volume to avoid disturbing the household. I stared at the screen. Our AI-driven defenses were still operational, but hobbled, distracted by decoys, their attention diverted from what truly mattered. The real attack had exploited a blind spot, and the system hadn't even registered the intrusion. I didn't hesitate. I initiated an override protocol, a single command, a single line of code, and instantly, I took the system off autopilot. Our defensive mechanisms were no longer controlled by algorithms. They were under my direct control. Every gate, every trigger, every sensor. If anything went wrong from that point on, it wouldn't be attributed to system failure. The responsibility would fall squarely on me. My palms were slick with sweat. The terminal confirmed the transition to manual mode, and with it came an unnerving silence, a heavy, weighted silence devoid of predictive feedback, alerts generated only by my explicit programming. I was operating blindly but with complete authority. I conducted a full system scan. The moment the system transitioned, I detected something new, buried deep within the behavioral logs of Node C8, a script inserted 6 weeks earlier. The code was subtle, neither malicious nor overtly aggressive, yet it had altered how the node reported activity. The coding style was elegant, almost too elegant. I recognized that style, precise, efficient, recursive. Elias. What truly sent a shockwave through me was the metadata note. Request approved. AB. Adrian Bellwether. He hadn't just rehired Elias, he had authorized him to modify our reporting infrastructure. That explained why our security protocols hadn't detected the breach. The sensors weren't looking where they should have been. They had been instructed not to. I looked up, scanning the dark room, still alone. I took a deep breath, wiped my hands on my sleeves, and resumed my work, needing to close the entry point without arousing suspicion. They couldn't know I was observing their actions. My fingers moved faster now, restructuring firewall hierarchies, rerouting logging behavior, identifying suspicious outbound signals for covert monitoring. If they wanted stealth, I would show them true stealth. As I worked, a memory surfaced. 10 years earlier, my first night shift, a nervous junior analyst, jolted by excessive caffeine, observing unusual outbound traffic from a legacy backup system. I frantically called my manager, only to be dismissed as overreacting. 2 hours later, the system crashed, and I was left alone to restore it, cold, terrified, alone. That night, I learned a lesson absent from any textbook. Systems don't save themselves, people do. And people like Adrian rely on the system to conceal what they don't want exposed. My back ached, but I persevered. Fear had no place, only precision. By the time the first hints of dawn appeared on the horizon, I had neutralized the rogue code, reinforced critical nodes, and created a shadow layer of system alerts, visible only to me. I didn't know the extent of the conspiracy or who else was involved, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The system wasn't broken, it was intentionally blinded. By 3:03 a.m., the breach was contained. I had shut down the rogue server, terminated session tokens, revoked compromised digital certificates, and revalidated all endpoint connections. The attack vector had been neutralized without affecting a single external gateway. Not even our Tier 2 systems had registered any disruption. That was the point. It was designed to be invisible, yet I had seen it and stopped it. The system was secure. No data exfiltration, no service interruptions, no client impact on paper. It was a flawless containment operation. And yet, I felt anything but victorious. I felt empty. I leaned back, 12 monitors still emitting their soft green glow across the frigid room. My pulse had finally slowed, but the lingering silence felt sterile, heavy. At 3:07 a.m., I opened a new incident report. Title: Unauthorized Internal Breach. Node: sys01.dby. Severity: Critical. Status: Resolved. I meticulously documented everything: discovery time, intrusion pattern, IP trace, escalation path, and the precise countermeasures employed. I even included side-by-side code comparisons, the modified sensor script against the clean baseline from 6 weeks prior, highlighting Elias's distinctive coding patterns and the metadata link to Adrian Bellwether's approval. It was the most comprehensive technical report I had submitted in over a year. At 3:21 a.m., I manually entered the recipients: Adrian Bellwether, Marcus Chen, Head of Infrastructure, Internal Audit, and Isabella Davies, RCO. I hit send and waited. At 3:28 a.m., I checked the dashboard for acknowledgement. No ticket activity, no internal ping. At 3:35 a.m., still nothing, not even an automated reply. Out of habit, I reopened the sent message to verify it had left my outbox. That's when I saw it, beside Isabella's name. Delivery status: rerouted. Security digest queue. What? I expanded the email header. The system had automatically filtered her address, flagging it as an invalid recipient for internal security traffic. My report had been relegated to the daily digest, a compiled email batch reviewed at 7:30 a.m., typically by someone in legal. I hadn't authorized this. In fact, I'd submitted dozens of high-priority incidents in the past with direct CEO visibility, none ever filtered. But now, suddenly, the system decided Isabella didn't need to see the most significant breach we had ever encountered? No. Someone had made that decision, and I was beginning to suspect who. I minimized the report, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. No one else had responded, no messages, no calls, only the quiet hum of the servers and the static in my head. At 3:43 a.m., Sarah, from facilities, entered the server bay on her overnight rounds. "Still here?" she asked gently. "Just finished," I replied, forcing composure. She glanced at the screen wall, noticing the bandwidth spikes around 2:40 a.m. Power drain in Sector C? Something happened, she inquired. I hesitated. Nothing that made the news, I replied. She smiled faintly. You always fix things before the rest of us even notice they're broken. I nodded. Bad habit, I admitted. She paused. Claire, does anyone ever actually thank you for what you do? I gave a wry smile. Only the machines, I replied. She chuckled and left, her footsteps fading into the hallway. At 3:51 a.m., I shut down my workstation, slung my bag over my shoulder, and headed toward the elevator. The building was dim and sterile, as it always felt after midnight, but tonight it felt colder, as if something had been erased, and I wasn't sure if it was the breach or a piece of myself. The elevator opened, and I stepped inside. My reflection in the polished doors seemed smaller, muted, out of focus. I scanned my ID badge instinctively. Nothing beeped back. It wasn't deactivated, it was simply slow. Or perhaps I was only noticing it now as the doors slid shut. I looked at the security camera in the corner, a single red, blinking steadily. It wasn't watching me, it was recording my departure, clean, silent, as if I had never been there at all. By 6:15 a.m., the building was no longer mine alone. I returned to Arcavia headquarters, still in the same clothes, hair hastily tied back, my eyes heavy from countless hours staring at screens. The sun was beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the glass-paneled lobby. Morning had arrived, but something felt profoundly wrong. The receptionist, Jessica, didn't offer her usual greeting, no nod, no hey, Clara. She simply stared at her screen, tapping listlessly. I tried not to take it personally. Inside the elevator, two software engineers, David and Maya, entered behind me. They used to engage me in discussions about system load balancing or exchange quick jokes about overnight code deployments. This time, they remained rigidly silent, David tapping his badge and staring straight ahead, no small talk, no eye contact. By 6:22 a.m., I reached the fourth floor, the security and infrastructure level. The overhead lights were fully illuminated, casting a harsh white glow across the rows of cubicles and sleek conference rooms. I walked past the espresso bar empty, past Marcus's desk empty. Then I saw Sarah emerging from the HR suite, tablet in hand. Sarah Miller, our head of human resources, wasn't just a colleague. We'd worked side by side for 6 years, weathering 2 layoffs together. She was the one who persuaded me to stay when I almost accepted a startup offer last spring. She used to send me memes on Sundays and leave a peppermint tea at my desk every Friday. Her eyes met mine for a fleeting moment, then she lowered her gaze and walked past without speaking, not even a nod. A cold dread washed over me. This wasn't Sarah being busy, this was Sarah avoiding something. I paused, trying to decipher the atmosphere. Background chatter hummed, yet I couldn't distinguish a single coherent sentence. People were whispering, not directly to me, but about me. I could feel it. I opened Slack on my phone, hoping for an announcement, a policy change, a restructuring, anything to explain the shift in energy. I searched for the channel, core security. Nothing. This couldn't be right. I scrolled through my sidebar. Infra, DevOps, compliance, all present, but the security channel was missing. I switched to the desktop view and manually entered the phrase, join core security. The system responded, channel does not exist or you do not have permission to view it. Error. Channel does not exist or you do not have permission. My heart skipped a beat. I accessed Slack's access logs and filtered by group permissions. It was buried deep, but the data was irrefutable. I had been removed from the core security workspace 48 hours earlier at 2:26 p.m., 2 days before the breach. No notification, no request, no warning, simply gone. I stared at the screen, my fingertips twitching. Clara. I turned. It was Michael, one of the newer cybersecurity analysts, friendly, bright, perhaps too honest for this floor. He seemed uneasy, holding a coffee cup in one hand and a laptop under his arm. I saw the internal logs, he said cautiously. That was some fast work last night. I nodded. Thanks. He glanced around, then leaned in slightly. They told us to keep quiet, he whispered. I narrowed my eyes. Who did? He hesitated. Adrian's office. He shifted his weight. Clara, I'm not supposed to say this, but they scrubbed the breach log from the team board, said it was a false alarm, and folded it into the weekly diagnostics. I clenched my jaw. I thought you should know, he added quickly, then hurried away before I could reply. I stood there, my pulse racing, thoughts colliding, the report I sent, the silence, the strange looks. It wasn't paranoia, it was deliberate exclusion, not merely ignored, but erased. Everyone wanted me out of the loop. I sat down at my desk, but the chair felt foreign. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then moved without conscious thought. I opened the legacy backup dashboard, the one no one had used since Adrian forced the migration to the new system. My access was still active, signifying one crucial fact: I still had eyes in places they had forgotten to shut down. At 8:57 a.m., my company badge vibrated with a calendar notification. Meeting. Adrian Bellwether. Location: executive level. 19th floor. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. precisely. There was no subject line, no assistant CC'd, just me and a meeting I hadn't requested. I stood before the elevator, momentarily frozen, then stepped inside. The ascent felt slower than usual, too smooth, too silent. Each floor hummed with activity, but the 19th floor was different, executive quiet, where noise went to die. When the doors opened, Adrian's assistant, Victoria, sat at the reception desk. Usually, she'd offer a warm nod or ask if I wanted coffee. Today, she barely glanced up. He's ready for you. I knocked once. No answer. She opened the door. Adrian Bellwether stood by the window, his back turned, arms folded behind him. The city skyline stretched before him like a corporate empire he believed he owned. He didn't look up. Clara, he said, his voice low and carefully diplomatic. Have a seat. I didn't. He turned slowly and walked to his desk. A tan envelope rested in the center, as if waiting. He tapped it once with 2 fingers. We're restructuring, he announced, realigning security functions to better align with our future objectives. My pulse quickened, slow but heavy. What does that mean exactly? I asked. It means we're moving to an external model, he replied. Third-party expertise. More flexible. Less overhead. He gestured toward the envelope. You'll find your severance package inside. We're offering a generous transition. I blinked. You're firing me. He smiled politely. Let's call it a realignment. No one realigns someone overnight without warning, especially not after they've just thwarted a major breach. His face remained impassive, which was quickly resolved and overblown. According to the latest review, it didn't qualify as a reportable event. I stepped forward, anger rising. You buried my report, I said. I wrote it appropriately. You removed me from the core security channel. I streamlined the chain of communication. You brought Elias back. That stopped him, for a second. He tilted his head. Clara, let's not make this emotional. I stared at him. Elias was removed for cause. He was unstable. He proposed exploits, then tried to justify them as tests. Now you bring him back and... Adrian slid a folder across the table. Elias Tech is the firm we're partnering with. They've built an agile penetration testing team. Modern protocols. Real-time response structure. They're already under contract as of yesterday afternoon. I opened the folder. Elias Tech LLC vendor agreement. Approved. Signed yesterday at 3:17 p.m. My stomach churned. You signed this while I was still neutralizing the breach he helped design. Adrian didn't flinch. You've done valuable work, Clara, but systems evolve. We need vendors who innovate faster, leaner, not internal friction. I picked up the envelope. It felt light. Final? Is this why no one's talking to me? I asked quietly. Why Sarah won't look me in the eye? Why the breach log disappeared? He offered a placid smile. I can't speak for others. You've given 7 years to this company, and we appreciate it. No, I snapped, my voice rising. You don't. You used me to fix what your vendor broke, and you pushed me out so no one would ask why you hired him in the first place. Adrian retreated behind his desk. You're taking this too personally. I laughed, a hollow sound. You made it personal the second you decided silence was more valuable than the truth. He didn't answer. I turned to leave, my fingers tightening around the envelope. At the door, I paused. One last question. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Or did you just think I'd leave quietly? He remained silent. I walked out. The elevator ride down was slower this time. I felt the weight of the envelope in my hand, but it was nothing compared to the pressure building in my chest. Rage, betrayal, disbelief, but never despair. Not when I still had access to the one system they'd forgotten to revoke. I didn't go to a rooftop bar, a park bench, or for a drive to clear my head. I went home. It was 10:02 a.m. when I entered my apartment, blinds still drawn, laptops still open where I'd left them the night before. The air smelled of stale coffee and overheating electronics. A stillness mirrored the emptiness inside me. I dropped the envelope on the kitchen counter unopened. I didn't need to see the number. I already knew its worth, a signature and silence. I sat down at my workstation, powered on my secondary monitor, and accessed the air-gapped backup terminal, not connected to the cloud, not on Arcavia's network, mine. The last thing they hadn't touched. My fingers moved deliberately, restoring diagnostic logs from the breach window, 2:01 a.m. to 3:15 a.m. What I found shouldn't have surprised me, but it still stung. Exactly 21 minutes before the breach began, a security alert suppression had been triggered manually. Node. Zurich Gateway. Action. Disable behavioral alerts. Type A packets. Time. 1:39 a.m. Accessed via user profile AB. Art01 Adrian Bellwether system handle. I stared at the string for a long time. Adrian Bellwether. He hadn't just covered up the aftermath. He had orchestrated the breach, disabled the sensors, and waited for the chaos to unfold. And when I had saved everything before it exploded, he ensured I would disappear along with the problem. I clenched my jaw, then exhaled slowly. Not rage, not yet. I needed proof, not for them, but for myself. I opened a hidden directory within the backup system, a decrypted archive I'd created a year ago when I started noticing subtle anomalies in team permissions and audit logs, a habit formed long before Adrian arrived, back when trust was earned through redundancy. Within the archive was a nested folder labeled Personnel Deep. It took a moment to unpack. Inside was a PDF document devoid of metadata, a simple file titled Security Restructure Proposal. Version 3.2, Final. The first 3 pages presented high-level strategic points, budget savings, outsourcing benefits, a generic case for externalizing security roles. Page 4 began listing names. I scrolled slowly. Each name had a corresponding status: retain, reassign, phase out. My name was listed first, Clara Kendrick. Phase out, Q2. Reason, resistance to integration. Legacy mindset, poor adaptability to vendor-based architecture. I reread it, then again. Below mine were 6 more names, 3 engineers, 2 analysts, 1 senior compliance officer, all marked for transition or termination. I knew these people. I'd mentored 2 of them, had lunch with another just last week. They had no idea. This wasn't about efficiency, it was a purge. I sat back, my hand covering my mouth. My chest tightened, not from anger, but from grief. Grief for a version of the company I had once believed in, one where merit ensured longevity, where loyalty didn't come with an expiration date. I opened my personal notebook, black leather, torn at the corner, and began writing. 10:18 a.m. Breach initiated by internal override. Sensor suppression confirmed. Decision to terminate made prior to event. Label was never lost. It was handed over. I paused, then underlined the last sentence twice. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I retrieved a small, sealed black hard drive from my desk drawer. Not just a backup, but what I called the failsafe. A complete copy of Arcavia's infrastructure schema and a legacy admin credential chain that hadn't been purged when Adrian's team switched systems last quarter, because no one thought to look back far enough. Because no one thought I'd still be here. I connected the drive. The lights blinked blue. Everything I needed to understand the full scope of their actions, and to undo it if I chose, was here. I didn't know what my next move would be, but I knew this. They had underestimated me. They thought breaking my heart would destroy me, but all it did was open my eyes. It was 9:02 p.m. when I rechecked the watchdog file. I sat by the window, blinds half drawn, the orange city haze bleeding across my carpet. The air was still, broken only by the faint hum of my backup system's fans and the low whistle of the wind between the window panes. The anger had subsided. It had burned itself out hours ago. Now, I was simply ready. I opened the watchdog script, clean, sparse, silent. It didn't shout. It waited. Built 2 years ago, back when internal threats were still rumors and senior security engineers still had the autonomy to make decisions without seeking permission. The protocol was officially termed a continuity safeguard, an internal failsafe designed to maintain system integrity during unexpected account loss or role termination. But we all knew it for what it was, a watchdog. It monitored heartbeat signals linked to credential clusters. If a critical account was revoked outside standard deactivation procedures, the watchdog would trigger a tiered protocol chain. Tier 1, isolate all active command modules. Tier 2, disable financial data streaming. Tier 3, initiate full system lockdown and log archival. And below Tier 3, buried so deeply that most never saw it, was Tier 4, the part only I knew about. The code that sent a ping to a secondary server located halfway across the world, a machine outside Arcavia's ecosystem. Something I called Echo Root. It resided on a server stack in rural Estonia, hosted through a shadow node built years ago with the assistance of an old colleague, Marina Lee, a former encryption specialist turned ethical hacker. Marina had once told me over noodles in Singapore, if you ever build a system to protect something significant, ensure the lock isn't inside the vault. Echo Root wasn't just a backup. It was an archive, a memory, a snapshot of the entire Arcavia system as it existed before the vendor integration push, containing permission trees, admin overrides, and the complete user access log from before Adrian Bellwether ever signed a single document. And if the watchdog fired, Echo Root would awaken. I leaned back, staring at the lines of code. The script hadn't changed. It didn't need to. It was designed to be quiet, unassuming. It didn't ask questions. It only listened for one thing, whether Clara Kendrick's access was revoked without following proper procedure. That's all. And now I just had to wait. I rested my fingers on the keyboard, then opened an old email chain, one from 6 months ago, a brief exchange between Marina and me. After she had relocated her team to a hybrid infrastructure base in Tallinn, her last message remained unread in my inbox. Clara, if you ever need to disappear, ping twice and let the code do the talking. We built it for this. You're not crazy for preparing, just rare. I hadn't replied, not until now. I clicked compose and typed 4 words, watchdog still on standby. I hit send, no emotion, no drama, just fact. I minimized the window and closed the terminal. The script would run in the background, invisible to every tool Arcavia currently used. Adrian's team had migrated the stack, yes, but they hadn't rewritten the core logic. They didn't know which wires still hummed beneath their polished dashboard. They hadn't checked under the floorboards. I got up and walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and let the silence settle, not the silence of defeat, but the kind that precedes a storm you've been preparing for, one you don't have to stop, only survive. By 9:48 p.m., the city outside had fallen dark, except for traffic lights and the faint glow from apartment windows. I stood at my window, looking across the river at the still-lit offices in Arcavia's tower. For 7 years, that building had felt like a second home. Now it resembled a hollow shell of glass and steel, devoid of weight, devoid of memory. They thought silence would erase me, but they forgot I had built the part of the system that never sleeps. By 7:23 a.m., I stood before the Arcavia Tower for what I believed would be the last time. I carried no bag, only a scarf, my access badge, and a silver USB drive tucked inside my coat pocket. The sidewalk was bustling with the morning commute. No one noticed me enter the building. It was no different than hundreds of times before, only this time, I wasn't coming to solve a crisis, I was coming to leave. The lobby was warmer than I remembered, the polished floor overly reflective, and the walls adorned with new branding panels. Agility, trust, innovation. I almost chuckled. The security guard was new. He didn't even look up as I tapped my badge. It still worked, indicating they hadn't revoked my physical access, only the digital components they deemed important. I took the elevator to the 4th floor, the security division. The doors opened to a hallway I once called home. Everything looked the same brittle fern dying in the corner, the same smudged glass wall by the whiteboard, even the bulletin board still displaying my post-it note from last quarter's security audit. People are the first firewall. Don't forget. No one looked up as I walked through the corridor. A few glanced, then quickly looked away. Some didn't even notice. I was already a ghost. Sarah emerged from a conference room as I passed, pausing. Our eyes met. She didn't smile, neither did I, but she offered the faintest nod, not approval, not apology, just acknowledgement. I moved on. At my desk, everything was exactly as I'd left it, the mouse pad slightly askew, the notepad open to half-written notes about threat modeling, my chipped black mug still beside the monitor, cold coffee congealed in a single brown ring. I sat for a moment, then retrieved the silver USB from my pocket and placed it gently on the keyboard. It didn't look like much, but it held everything: encrypted logs, cross-reference timestamps, behavioral anomalies, and one auto-executing script. Not malicious, just loud. If plugged into any Arcavia machine, it would reveal a clear, visual audit trail, no explanations, no edits, just the facts. I left no note. Anyone who found it would either understand or ignore it, and both outcomes served my purpose. As I turned to leave, I heard rapid keyboard clicks down the hall. I glanced toward the open tech bay. Elias. He didn't see me. He was hunched over Terminal 7, typing furiously, switching between windows. A second monitor displayed the infrastructure permissions dashboard. He seemed to be setting up a root key migration, rerouting administrative privileges using a mirrored account system, a clumsy move, if not thoroughly audited. His hand hovered over the push-leave command. He hesitated, toggling back to a diagnostic window, probably to verify response times. He had overlooked something. I saw it in the bottom corner of the screen, small, almost invisible, internal triggers, not cleared. This meant any action he took, any escalation of privilege, would be mirrored into the legacy monitoring layer, the one no one had checked since the migration, the one I still had access to. I smiled, not a vengeful smile, not even satisfaction, but the smile of someone watching a chess piece fall into place, not because she forced it, but because the opponent never saw the trap beneath his own strategy. I turned away, walked back down the hall. As I passed the break room, a junior engineer, Kevin, looked up and gave me a small wave. He didn't know. None of them did. They were still operating under the assumption that the system was protecting them, that someone, somewhere, was still guarding the gate. Maybe that used to be me. Maybe it still was. The elevator opened silently. I stepped inside, pressed the ground floor, and exhaled, no anger, no panic, just control. As the doors closed, I considered the USB one last time. It would sit there, untouched, until someone curious or brave plugged it in, or until the right mistake triggered its presence. Either way, it was no longer my responsibility to be loud. The code would speak for itself. At 7:01 a.m., the system blinked, then went still. Clara's account, C. Kendrick, primary, was deactivated by a script executed from the CTO's master override protocol. No alert, no confirmation screen, just a silent execution command from Terminal 10 under administrative clearance within the mainframe. A signal pulsed once, then branched into 3 paths. The watchdog had awakened on the 22nd floor. Elias sipped lukewarm coffee, glancing at a DevOps audit sheet while the infrastructure console pulsed green. He had just deployed the mirrored permission set he'd coded overnight, migrating root-level access from legacy users to the Elias Tech control schema. The first blink occurred on dashboard 7. Client reporting lagged by exactly 4 seconds. He didn't notice. By 7:02 a.m., the firewall validation node began to loop, triggering the watchdog's Tier 1 protocol. The system quietly began withdrawing command-level privileges from all terminals not using verified legacy tokens. Access levels above Tier 4 were now read-only. Passwords began silently resetting in the background, randomized strings generated by the watchdog's logic core. Back on the 4th floor, Kevin, the junior engineer, looked up from his screen and blinked. "Hey, is the dev dashboard acting weird for you too?" he asked. No one responded. By 7:03 a.m., the revenue reconciliation node failed to respond to 2 consecutive internal pings, triggering Tier 2. Dashboards began going dark, first financial, then security. The error message was simple: root mismatch. Please contact system administrator. In the boardroom on the 19th floor, a breakfast meeting was in progress. CEO Isabella Davies sat at the head of the table, reviewing a slide on quarterly growth figures. Adrian Bellwether stood near the screen, confident as ever, clicking through bullet points about efficiency, streamlined security, and modernization. Then Victoria, Isabella's assistant, entered the room without knocking. She looked pale. "Isabella, you just received an alert on your private inbox." Isabella raised an eyebrow. "What kind of alert?" Victoria handed her a printed page. She'd already retrieved it from the secure printer in legal. Isabella read it once, then again, more slowly. Credential mismatch. Emergency lockdown initiated by legacy script. Trigger time, 7:01 a.m. Subject, C. Kendrick. Primary. Revoked. Location, Arcavia Global Core. She looked at Adrian. He said nothing. By 7:04 a.m., chaos began to ripple through the building. All emails bounced. Terminals auto-locked. 2 compliance analysts were ejected from their audit shells mid-query. 3 account managers and sales were locked out of client files. One even shouted from behind a glass wall, "I can't access the contract vault. Everything's grayed out." Kevin stood and approached Sarah's desk. "Hey, something's wrong with the endpoint monitor. My admin role just downgraded mid-session." Sarah clicked rapidly at her own station. "Mine too." "And the logs. They're scrambled." 3 floors up, Elias finally noticed the pattern. He accessed the monitoring panel and froze. All his permissions revoked. Even his override tool was locked. A single blinking message appeared on his screen: System integrity violation. Escalation disabled. He rushed to a backup terminal, but the watchdog's Tier 3 had already isolated all unverified subnets. Elias' text control path was gone. Adrian's phone buzzed, 1 notification, then 10 more. He didn't look at Isabella, didn't speak. By 7:06 a.m., the watchdog executed Tier 4. A burst of compressed code shot to a secure external node, Echo Root, outside Arcavia's control. From there, a summary audit was generated and sent to Isabella Davies's inbox under the subject line, "Containment triggered. Audit attached. Unauthorized clearance migration detected." The report wasn't long. It was clean, time-stamped, signed with my original developer key. Isabella stood up. The room fell silent. She looked at Adrian. Her voice was low. "You hid the breach. And you fired the only person who stopped it." Adrian opened his mouth, but no words came. Outside the boardroom, red banners appeared on hallway monitors, access temporarily disabled. Please wait for system revalidation. By 7:07 a.m., the entire building was in silent lockdown, no sirens, no alarms, just one phrase echoing silently in every connected system: Watchdog Protocol. Complete. By 7:42 a.m., I was seated at a window table in the Lindstrom Cafe, 2 blocks east, across the river from Arcavia Tower. The air smelled of dark roast coffee and cinnamon, with a hint of rain. Outside, the city buzzed in its usual rhythm, but across the bridge, Arcavia's glass fortress pulsed like a wounded machine. From here, it looked like any other office tower, but I could see the difference now. Inside, people moved quickly, not with purpose, but with panic. I sipped my black coffee, leaned back, my coat draped over the chair. Elena, the barista, glanced at me from behind the counter. "You used to work over there, right?" she asked, nodding toward the tower. I did. "Something's going on. Phones have been ringing nonstop since 7, she said, pointing at the small TV in the corner. The local news ticker scrolled across the bottom. Breaking: Arcavia systems hit by internal lockdown. Trading platform suspended. Estimated losses climbed to $71 million. I didn't blink. Another headline flashed. Sources say internal audit triggered by legacy protocol breach. A shaky video clip played briefly. Dozens of people leaving Arcavia's lobby, some on phones, others staring at frozen tablets. Elias appeared for a split second in the background, arguing with a technician. Across the window, I saw Kevin near the front steps, holding her badge and staring at the turnstile that no longer lit green. Elena turned up the volume. A reporter's voice crackled. "Internal watchdog protocol triggered at exactly 7:01 this morning. According to confidential sources, the identity of the original developer remains unconfirmed." I smiled behind my cup. Let it remain unconfirmed. Let them guess. I opened my laptop, not for work, just to observe. My private dashboard loaded quickly. Echo route was stable. The audit logs were already backed up on 2 continents. They couldn't stop it now. The truth was already moving faster than they were. A ping interrupted my thoughts. A message from Marina. Clean signal. Well done. Quiet as ever. Another notification buzzed, this time from a public platform. Maxwell Grant, CEO of Grantwell Capital, Arcavia's largest institutional client, had posted a single-line status on his verified account. "Only person I trust now is Clara. Without her, we're out." Elena gasped softly. "Wait, Clara? That's you." I nodded once. She didn't say anything more. She simply poured another cup of coffee and placed it beside mine. "No charge," she said. By 7:53 a.m., Isabella Davies stepped out of the Arcavia lobby. I could see her through the window, stern, unreadable. She made no statement, no press conference, but the way her team clustered around her spoke volumes. She was furious, not at the collapse, but at the silence that had caused it. The collapse hadn't screamed. It hadn't broken glass or tripped alarms. It had whispered. It had asked, "Why didn't you listen when it was quiet?" Behind Isabella, Adrian wasn't visible. I wondered if he was still upstairs, scrambling, writing apologies, or deleting things too late. The cafe remained quiet. Elena returned to polishing glasses. A man at a distant table typed with one hand while holding his phone in the other. Life continued, as always, except now I was outside the noise. I looked back one last time at the tower, not with resentment, not with triumph, but with clarity. I hadn't broken them. I had simply stopped holding them together. At 9:04 a.m., the official statement went out. Effective immediately, Adrian Bellwether has resigned from his position as Chief Technology Officer of Arcavia Systems. Internal review ongoing. Transition support will be provided. It was clipped, professional, cold, but everyone understood. Behind closed doors, the board had finally reviewed the chain of failures, Elias's ghost signatures, the suspicious log modifications, the quiet rerouting of internal alerts, and, of course, my name, threaded through every early detection layer still intact. By 10:06 a.m., Elias Tech's office space had been cleared. Elias himself was unreachable. His company's homepage returned a 404 error. Silence lingered like smoke after a fire. Zia's message arrived mid-morning. "Clara, I'm sorry. I should have said something." I froze, but I read the full log. You were right. I sat at my desk by the window, the city glowing beneath the clouds. My inbox was flooded, external offers, internal apologies, one quiet inquiry from Isabella Davies's executive office asking if I would consider consulting during the restoration process. I didn't answer immediately. I simply clicked into the archived folder labeled Silver Drive Backup. Inside, one document, no executable files, no malware, no override commands, just a clean PDF. Title: Incident Report 3:01 a.m. Breach Containment, prepared by Clara Kendrick. Attached: full log chain. Unedited, the exact same report I had sent weeks ago, the one that was filtered, buried, ignored. That's what was on the USB, no tricks, no revenge code, no destruction plan, just the truth. And when someone finally read it, truly read it, everything else unraveled by itself. I stood and stretched. I didn't feel triumphant or smug. What I felt was harder to name, an earned quietness, like setting something down after carrying it far longer than intended. A message pinged, this time from Marina. Echo root logs have been archived. Your access will remain in place, but maybe you won't need it anymore. I smiled, not at the screen, but at the idea. I closed my laptop and reached for my coat. Outside, the world kept moving, cafes were open, trains were on time, emails pinged in offices I no longer needed to return to. But something had shifted, not out there, but in me. I picked up my notebook, flipped to the last page, and wrote 2 lines in tight handwriting. I didn't destroy them. I just stopped protecting them. I closed the book and stepped out the door. Sometimes justice doesn't look like fire. It looks like walking away while everything behind you collapses under the weight of its own lies. If you've ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or silenced for doing the right thing, know this. Your silence doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous. And your truth? It waits, just as mine did. If this story resonated with you, leave us a comment below. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their quiet strength. And don't forget to subscribe, because there's always another story, another reckoning, and another Clara waiting.